Okay, so I'm a professor of sport and exercise science, but my research interests are looking at the interaction between nutrition and activity. So I actually have a lot of similarities in my interests with Tom, and we do some studies that are just looking at nutritional interventions and the impact on muscle health and metabolism. But as I said, the most interesting thing for me is this interaction between activity and the food that we eat. So traditionally, I guess this area has been very focused around athletes, so trying to optimize performance through giving athletes recommendations for their diet. But actually what we're very aware of now is that the combination of exercise or activity and nutrition has huge impacts on health across the whole range of population. And we're very interested in these types of interventions for muscle health and aging, for weight loss and obesity, for maintenance of health in children as well. So it has a very diverse application. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is particularly around the role of activity and diet in maintaining muscle health and function as we age. So unfortunately, one of the kind of natural consequences of aging is that we do start to lose muscle. So this is an image of the thigh muscle, where you can see that in a young individual, there is lots of lean muscle mass there, but as we age, that muscle mass, the darker part of the picture, starts to decline, and you can see more white on the far picture, and that's fat, and you start to see more fat within the muscle. And I say this is a natural consequence, and so along with that, we obviously get a decline in muscle function as well. So this graph just shows you that in both men and women, we kind of have an optimal muscle mass and muscle function, and then as we get older, that muscle function declines due to that loss in muscle mass. And obviously then that means that we lose power, and that then relates to our ability to function properly, and that's when frailty starts to really set in, when we lose that functioning and power in the muscle to be able to do the daily tasks that we want to do. But you can see, interestingly, on that graph there, the black dots are individuals who have done exercise throughout their lifetime. So it says endurance trained. That's not necessarily people who are running marathons. This is just individuals who are staying active and doing activity throughout their life course, that they are able to maintain more power throughout the life course because they are maintaining their muscle mass and their muscle function. So obviously we're very interested in how we can support people to maintain that muscle mass through activity and through their diet. So we know that regular exercise is really important for lots and lots of different aspects of health, particularly for muscle function and strength. Resistance exercise in particular is very beneficial, and often people enjoy resistance exercise type activity more than maybe endurance-based exercise. But really the important message is that whatever you're doing, as long as you're staying active, finding the type of exercise that you enjoy doing, then that is beneficial to your muscle health. But as we said, a combination of exercise and diet will optimize those effects of exercise. And in particular, we're very interested in protein. And protein, in combination with exercise, has a very positive effect on muscle function, and actually starts to prevent this breakdown of muscle as we age. So one of the aspects also of aging is that actually we become a little bit resistant to the effects of protein. So there is now a call that actually as we age, we may need a little bit more protein in our diet to have similar effects to what we might have seen when we were younger. So there are recommendations out there, but they're based around grams of protein per kilogram of your body mass per day, which actually is very difficult for the general population to understand in terms of what that means in terms of actual food intake. So just a little bit about protein and exercise. So there is very good evidence to show that as we age, we can get really good benefits from exercise when we exercise and consume an adequate protein intake. As I said, protein requirements may be elevated as we age, so that's important to consider. And it's also important to think about the source of protein, the timing of that protein, and how much we consume on a daily basis. So there's lots and lots of different protein sources in our diet. Plant proteins are becoming more and more popular, so the protein that we get from things like peas and legumes. But the more common protein sources that we get in our diet are through things like dairy, white meat, red meats, fish. And in particular, whey protein from milk is very, very effective in helping to maintain muscle mass and strength. So there's this big increase now in research in this area, trying to understand what's the kind of optimal protein intake as we age, and how can we make sure that we optimize strength and functionality through diet and exercise. This graph is quite old now, but it just shows you that overall there are big beneficial effects. So this is data from a meta-analysis. So this is where researchers will take data from lots and lots of different studies, all in the same area, and put all that data together to see if the overall effect is positive or negative. And what this shows that in both older and in younger participants, protein definitely does increase muscle mass when you do some resistance exercise. So there's excellent evidence out there, but what we need to understand better really is how can we get that extra protein into people's diets. So lots of the studies that are published use things like whey protein powders or like protein bars and things that probably aren't the types of foods that you'd want to consume on a daily basis in your diet. So we're going to talk a little bit about Protein for Life, which is a study that we're running here at Newcastle. So, as I said, we know that protein will slow the decline of muscle mass with aging. We know that we're failing to meet the needs of the population in terms of products out there on the market that will help to reduce frailty. We know that 1/3 of adults over the age of 50 aren't consuming enough protein in their diet from the big national diet and nutrition surveys that happen in the UK. And so the point of Protein for Life as a project was for us to really try and understand how we can best get more protein into the daily diet of those that need it. And it's a study that we're working with the food industry, which is really important, like in Tom's work, to try and get some realistic solutions that can go to market. So this research is funded by all the research councils, you can see along the bottom there. So how do we maintain a healthy protein intake in an ageing population? And what we're really trying to do through this project is to develop and disseminate what we call a set of design rules. So all the important things that need to be considered by the food industry when they're wanting to develop or reformulate foods that you would buy in the supermarket and consume on a daily basis. So the project took quite a different approach. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. So we've got psychologists, nutritionists, we've got health geographers, lots of different people on the research team trying to answer this question. And we work with the food industry. So we've got 7 industry partners on the project. So the likes of Sainsbury's, Nestle, Mondelez, so big food production companies and retail. To work with them, because we need to try and come up with things that are relevant to the food industry so they can produce the product, but also relevant to the consumers. So a couple of things that we've done. So we've looked at patterns of protein intake throughout the day. I'm going to show you a graph on the next slide. We've also run focus groups with individuals to try and groups of individuals, some through voice, to try and understand more what are the barriers or the constraints to increasing protein intake in the diet. And as I said, also talking to industry about what they may need to consider. So there's no point us coming up with products that are very expensive, that aren't very palatable. We need to think about sustainability issues with protein as well. And these are all the types of issues that came up when we ran our focus groups with individuals to say, these are the things that are important to us. We need things that aren't going to be too expensive, that are easy to consume, and also thinking about the environmental issues as well. this is, I think, the only graph that I'm going to show you, but I think it's really interesting. When we looked at national data around protein intake, so this is for adults over the age of 65. So when we look at the distribution of protein throughout a day, you can see that it's very, very skewed to the evening meal in older adults. And this is a pattern that's been shown in other countries as well. So it shows us that there are opportunities then throughout the day to maybe look at snacking opportunities or breakfast opportunities where we can try and look at how we can get more protein into the diet on a daily basis. Okay, so just a few take-home messages. I will also say that we have 2 SEMA PhD students starting in September who are going to be focusing on this area, so looking at the role of exercise, particularly resistance exercise, and how we can use whole food protein sources to try and increase muscle mass, muscle strength, functionality and quality of life in older adults. So there will be some studies running in Newcastle and in Sheffield over the next couple of years in this area. But my take-home messages really are that keeping active is really, really important. And as I said, it's kind of you finding something that you enjoy. We don't know what is the optimal amount of exercise or type of exercise. It's all about keeping active and keeping moving, and that's very, very important. We do know that protein requirements increase with age, so if it's something that you haven't considered or thought about, then think about how you might want to try and get a little bit more protein into your diet on a daily basis. Regular intake of protein is much more beneficial, so little and often throughout the day will have a much better impact rather than just consuming all your protein at the end of a day in your evening meal. And if you are exercising, then having some protein straight after your exercise will help your muscles to recover, and it'll also help your muscles to recover stronger as well. So timing's important around exercise. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks for keeping to time, Emma. Any questions? I've got a quick question. But we'll ask. Could we get the microphone, please? Yes.
Sorry. Hello. One of the things that I'd like to point out is the misunderstanding that a 125-gram piece of meat is not 125 grams of protein. And there is huge misunderstanding about what protein actually is in the diet. And I think that is something that's not talked about at all.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really important point, and something that really came out of our focus groups that we ran, that people don't necessarily understand where they get protein from in the diet. They think it's meat, really. Protein is meat, and don't understand they get protein from other sources. But yes, the same point that actually you have to consume a lot more of that meat to get the amount of protein that you require. So for us, that was actually something that we want to take forward. We've talked to the British Nutrition Foundation about looking at some educational work to try and get people to understand what is protein, how much you need to consume, and also that it's not just for bodybuilders. That came across a lot in the focus groups, that protein is for people who go to the gym, who've got big muscles, and work out maybe 2 or 3 times a day. Everybody needs protein in their diet, and certainly as we age, we need more protein. So yeah, thank you for raising that.
I just wanted to ask, what happens when you've lost a lot of muscle mass, or you've got osteoporosis or something like that? How on earth do you keep fit? It's something that I and several of my friends have worried about after finding we've got much more limited mobility. How do we exercise, and are we becoming very unfit?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Again, it's just finding something that you can do. So, as I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be structured exercise. Keeping moving, just daily living, actually, you're doing activity, going shopping, all these sorts of things. So I think it's just trying to do within your limits what you can do to keep active. And as I say, it doesn't have to be structured exercise of cycling for an hour or going to the gym. It doesn't have to be that type of activity. But yeah, it's a very good point. And actually, we know that a lot of the research tends to focus on healthy older adults, and there needs to be more research around those that maybe have those more mobility issues.
Fabulous, thanks very much. You said there isn't a guidance for exercise, but the number I've got in my head is that we should all be trying to do 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. Is that not the guideline for everybody?
Yeah, so that's the government guidelines, but we know that people don't do that. So I think it becomes just trying to be sensible about it. Yes, there has to be some kind of guideline set out by government, but what I'm saying is that for some people who find that difficult, anything is better than doing nothing. So keeping active is better than not doing anything at all.
Fabulous, thanks very much, Emma. Great. Yes, another round of applause. Thank you.